Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and welcome to our Week 1 economy overview for the 3.12 Heist League. During today's discussion, we're going to be looking at some price comparisons for Exalted Orbs, Mirrors of Kalandra, Simulacrum Fragments, Skittering Orbs, Golden Oils, and Headhunter. We're going to be comparing the prices from the current Heist League with the previous leagues of Harvest and Delirium. Our first price point comparison is Exalted Orbs in Heist and Harvest. Within 1 week of Heist League, Exalted Orbs are trading at or near 90 chaos per Exalted. At a similar point in time in the Harvest League, within about 1 week, Exalted were trading at or near 170 chaos per Exalted Orb. We are leading off our discussion today by talking about Exalted Orbs because, of course, Exalt to Chaos ratios are the foundations of any economy in a league in Path of Exile. If you want an overall indicator or an overall big picture idea of what's going on in any league's economy in Path of Exile, a quick snapshot of Exalt Orb prices oftentimes will give you an indicator about exactly how that particular league is performing in relationship to other previous leagues. There's a lot of different reasons for why Exalted Orb prices are different on a league-by-league basis, and I would love to hear any theories that you all might have down below in the comments. But we can see right here from the get-go, within 6 to 7 days of a league being launched, there is a massive, stark difference in terms of the overall economy between Heist League and between Harvest League. Many of you are familiar with our famous signature send-off, which is, I hope today is the day a Mirror of Kalandra drops for you. If a mirror drops for you during the first week of Heist League, or you trade for one, then right now it's valued at about 7,500 chaos. If you were to drop that same item, a Mirror of Kalandra, during the first week of Harvest League, that same item, a Mirror of Kalandra, would have been worth 15,000 chaos. So again, we see in between Exalted prices and Mirror prices that there is a vast difference in the amount of currency that is circulating and the price for specific top-end items that are being used in the economy. The next price that we're comparing is the Simulacrum price. The price for a Simulacrum during Heist League, always difficult to run, always even more difficult to say, is about 150 chaos during the opening week of Heist League. When you compare this with Path of Exile Harvest 3.11, it was at about 300 chaos 1 week into the league. Again, we see essentially a doubling of the amount of currency that it will take for you to have the same tradable items in Harvest versus in Heist. It's always fun to take a look at Delirium Orbs and see their prices and how they're impacting the economy and see which Delirium Orbs are being most used and are most valuable according to the player base. And for both Heist and Harvest, Skittering Orbs were the top in terms of overall price for Delirium Orbs. Presently, within a week of Heist's launch, Skittering Orbs are trading at or near about 30 chaos each, and that price appears to be on the rise. Within 1 week of Harvest, Skittering Orbs were trading at or near 35 chaos each. So here we see the first example of Harvest and Heist both lining up to having similar prices in a particular market. What does this mean over the long term? If we're projecting, I would just hazard a guess that Skittering Orbs are going to go up in price, and I would compare the present prices in Heist versus the prices in Standard to see exactly how much mobility there is in that potential market for the remainder of Heist League. If there is a large gap still remaining in between Skittering Orb current prices and where Standard prices are at, then there's going to be movement. When that movement exactly takes place, no one really knows, right? That's part of the fun of interacting in the market, and if you do know and are able to hazard a correct guess, then you can purchase in an item at a relatively low point before it skyrockets and meets its standard price or even potentially exceeds its standard price, and you simply make bonkers amounts of currency. It's a pretty safe bet, though, to say that Skittering Orb prices, already being at the top end of all Delirium Orbs right now in Heist League, are still going to go up and probably still have some room to grow, both in comparison based off of Harvest and off of Standard prices. Oil prices are always interesting to check out. No, I'm not talking about oil prices in relationship to your gasoline and filling up your vehicle to go and take your kids to a soccer game. I'm talking, of course, about blight oils, golden oils to be specific. During the first week of Heist League, Golden Oils are trading at or near about 55 chaos each. By comparison, in Harvest League, Golden Oils were trading at or near 100 C each during the first week of the league. Notice that there was a massive drop-off that happened after the first week and a half, right before the second week began of Harvest, and it would appear that that drop has already begun in Path of Exile Heist League. If you're looking to invest in something, golden oils probably aren't the best thing to invest in at the moment, simply because there's not a track record of a major amount of growth still left to happen. As I tell my wife, Mrs. Draconis, every day, I've been wrong before, I could be wrong now, and I'll be wrong again. So maybe I'm wrong. Go ahead, throw your money away. Go buy some golden oils. Next up is the prized Headhunter. Of course, this is prized, and this is the chase item that so many players throughout their life cycle in Path of Exile seek to acquire throughout temporary leagues to be able to simply run around, kill rares, and then not care about anything else going on. It feels really, really good to stack like 20 Headhunter buffs all at the same time. I'm just saying. Within 1 week of Heist, Headhunters are trading at or near 4,000 Chaos Orbs each. At a similar point in time in Harvest League, Headhunters were trading at or near 9,000 Chaos each. This is another great example where Heist and Harvest are vastly different economies. Again, we can speculate about the reasons why. Of course, crafting was a major part of that. But right now, the economy in Heist doesn't necessarily look much like the economy during the first week of Harvest. Now, while you might first look at Headhunters and see that there has been a massive drop on the graph bar displayed on the left-hand side, don't worry. At some point in the future, I am sure someone is going to show off some wonderfully exciting way to use Headhunters as you're either farming maps in order to farm rogue markers or interact with heists and grand heists and make all kinds of currency and explode all of those wonderful rare mobs that were formerly waiting behind the door to kill you, and now you've got a Headhunter, so don't worry. You've got 3 doorways worth of rare mobs on you now waiting to kill them. To sum up, if you're buying cards right now or are pursuing a Headhunter, it's a really good time to do it. This is probably going to be the low point for Headhunters in the league, although it could be that they trail off. As we see in Harvest, Headhunters did indeed trail off, and mostly that's because there weren't very many buffs for you to steal as you were doing traditional content in Path of Exile Harvest. Harvest itself wasn't necessarily a very good Headhunter league. But more on that in a bit when we compare Headhunter prices in Harvest versus Headhunter prices in Delirium. Speaking of big picture comparisons, let's make a couple of big picture comparisons about the different prices that we've already checked. In week 1 of Heist, Exalted are trading at about 90 C per X. In Harvest, Exalted were trading at or near 170 Chaos per X. And in Delirium League during the first week, Exalted were trading at or near 80 Chaos per X. So from our first big picture indicator, we can see already that Heist is much more similar to the economy of Delirium than it is to the economy of Harvest. Another great example of this is a big picture overview of the Mirror of Kalandra market. During the first week of Heist, mirrors are trading at or near 7,500 Chaos. In Harvest, they were 15,000 Chaos, and then in Delirium, pretty much the same price point as in Heist, 7,500 Chaos. So if you're ever looking to chase down or purchase a Mirror of Kalandra, now is a great time to do it because it's going to be at an all-time price point low, and every day throughout a league, Mirrors of Kalandra, for the most part, get more expensive. This is true whether or not it's a hyperinflated league in terms of currency like Harvest, or if it's a league where there's a steady and slow climb of appreciation of items like Delirium. The big picture of Simulacrum Prices shows another similar trend. Early on in Heist League, Simulacrums are trading at about 150 C per event. In Harvest, they were at 300 C, and in Delirium, they were at 70 C. Now, you might be looking at the downward trend on the Heist graph and worried that maybe it's not the best time to buy into Simulacrums. I would like to point out 2 things. First off, Simulacrums are notoriously difficult, and oftentimes players don't engage with them until they have a build that is proven to be able to push all the way through Wave 20. Secondly, Simulacrum drops, such as Unique Voices jewels, are incredibly desired by players who are making all kinds of crazy expensive builds. So, what's this mean in the short term? It means that the price is probably low and it's not going to be a very good short-term purchase. What's it mean in the long term? It means players are going to want their voices for those really expensive builds. So, if you've got a build that can farm Simulacrums, or if you've got the currency to buy up a whole bunch of them and then later sell them on in the league, that might be a good strategy for you to make currency. Whether it's trading or tackling content, who'd have thunk it? Either way, you can make currency in Path of Exile. The big picture for Skittering Orbs is that they are 30C in the first week of Heist, 35C in Harvest, and then 25C in Delirium. Skittering Orbs weren't nearly as favored during Delirium as they have been in Harvest since Delirium. I'm still very, very excited for Skittering Orbs and still think there's a lot of room on these potentially to move. But again, I could very much be wrong. This could be the upswing of where Skittering Orbs are going to top out at, and it might be that they dip even further than what they did in Delirium. Most of our numbers show that Heist is more similar to Delirium than to Harvest, so it would be counterintuitive for me to now look at the data and say, oh, well, I'm really hoping that Skittering Orbs are going to look a lot more like Harvest than they did during Delirium, but we'll wait and find out. Time will tell if I'm totally way off base on this. The big picture for golden oil prices is as follows. 55C during the first week in Heist, 100C in Harvest, and it continued to grow for a time until it crashed way hard once everybody actually had their in-game amulets, and something similar in Delirium, albeit was a bit smoother of a crash. Be aware of this and be wary. As more and more players get their endgame amulets set up and anointed, less and less players are going to want golden oils. Also, pro tip for starting next league, yeah, we're already talking about 313. If you really want to make a ton of currency, then playing blight maps during the first couple of days, not just filling out your atlas, not interacting with the league mechanic, but just farming blight maps is very, very profitable during the first 5 to 7 days of a league. I said we'd get back to Headhunters, didn't I? Let's take a look as we wrap up today's economy overview. In Heist, Headhunters are valued at about right now 4,000 chaos per. In Harvest, at a similar time, they were valued at about 9,000 chaos. In Delirium, they were also valued at about 9,000 chaos. Now, you can take this a couple of different ways. You might look at this and say, oh, Iron, this is a wonderful example how Harvest and Delirium actually overlap and are very similar economies. However, I'm going to look at this and say most of the data points that Harvest and Delirium were very different economies, and that Heist looks a lot more like Delirium than it looks like Harvest. If that's the case, then Headhunters are going to be on the way up soon, not on the way down, and in the long term, they're not going to come back down for quite some time. As players figure out the power level of Headhunters as well as the opportunity cost of using a Headhunter specifically when farming either in maps or in farming heists or in farming grand heists, players are going to want to chase down those Headhunters. More and more players wanting Headhunters drives up demand, which then of course encourages more and more players to farm for div cards or to use chance orbs or to farm beasts, lots of different ways in order to acquire a Headhunter. This is the good old tried and true economic principle that supply and demand are interactive and engage in a relationship all the time throughout the life cycle of a Path of Exile league. Headhunter, I think, is at a really, really low price point right now. None of the major content creators are coming out with videos about how to exploit Headhunters during heists, although that will come surely as people start beast imprinting top-tier grand heists once we actually get some server stability in 3.12 Heist League. If players are going to be willing to sink as much currency as they can into grand heists, including beast splitting, massively profitable imprints for blueprints, then surely those same players are going to have a couple of extra 1,000 chaos, or rather a couple of extra dozen exalted, to be able to add a Headhunter belt into their build and then steal rare mobs buffs as they're on their way out, stealing and taking all the contraband that they could get their grimy little hands on. Heist League has got way more potential than Harvest ever did to be a Headhunter league. I fully expect Headhunters to go way up over the next week to 2 weeks, as Heist League takes on more and more of the shape and the form in the economy of Delirium League than Harvest League. Well, thanks so much for joining us today on our Week 1 economy overview. I'd love to hear down below in the comments your thoughts about maybe what's surprising or what's standing out to you in the opening week of 3.12 Heist League. If you're new to the channel, then you can of course like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about future video discussions just like this one. And I hope today is the day a Mirror of Kalandra drops for you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.